Our featured speaker this evening is our very own Theresa Lina. She's known to many of you in SVP as a member of the board. She's an author of a strategy bestseller called Be the Go-To: How to Own Your Competitive Market, Charge More, and Have Customers Love You for It. She's a well-recognized Silicon Valley thought leader, strategist, and coach. She's the CEO of Lina Group, which specializes in market dominance and strategy for sustainable differentiation and profitable growth. She has acted as the chief strategy and marketing officer for several technology startups, as well as Fortune 100 companies around Silicon Valley and elsewhere. So everything from Fortune 100 down to niche startups. She's been involved with Stanford University since 2006, teaches a number of several graduate school of business executive education courses, an undergraduate course. She has been an executive coach for the Stanford Leadership Academy. She also spent several years with Stanford Technology Ventures program, where she led the campus-wide entrepreneurship week. So she's got a very deep credentials and deep roots in Silicon Valley. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing so that Theresa, you can share your slides once I figure out where my mouse is. Here we go. And with that,
Great.
take it away, Theresa.
Okay, great. First, can I get a thumbs up if I sound okay? If the sound is okay? All right, good. And you can see my screen? Good. Okay, great. Uh, First of all, I see some friends here tonight that I haven't seen in a while. So it's really fun to see your faces and names. And then many of you who are part of the Silicon Valley Product Management Association, who I've seen at other meetings. And so it's wonderful to see you back. And we also have some new names and faces. So welcome to everybody. I'm going to run through this, and at the end, normally for the last 20 minutes or so of our meetings, we do some networking. And if you'd like, we could also take that opportunity to workshop some of the concepts that I'm going to talk about tonight. And we'll go into breakout rooms for networking, but I can pop into your breakout rooms and help you think through how to apply some of what I talk about tonight to your situations. So I'm happy to do that at the end. Uh, I'm going to start by telling you that one of my first lessons in being perceived as indispensable in an organization actually came from telephone bills. And what happened is I was working for Accenture and I was on a pretty painful project to develop a new billing system for a communications company. This was about like the atmosphere that we had on our project, although obviously newer computers than this. But no, it was hard work. The client hated us, so every day was a slog. And over time, I did become friends with individual client personnel, and I learned everything I could about billing for telephone companies. And I came to understand the end-to-end functionality better than even the clients because they were often in silos. And after about a year of misery, I rolled off the project and I was so happy. I went on a vacation, I went off the grid. I got home and I had a message waiting for me from the office, and they said, the client wants you back tomorrow. So I just was crushed because I had been so excited about getting off of this long-term project. But I went back, and I won't go into any of that, any more detail, except to say that actually, ironically, over time, it led to some of my biggest career opportunities in the long run. In the long run. But even though personally I wasn't excited about going back for my career, it was really good because a consulting firm likes nothing more than to see their consultants in high demand by the client. And so, by learning that billing system, that functionality and the requirements deeply and broadly, I became unique in my expertise in that environment, and that's why they wanted me back. And this is in contrast to what many of us encounter and what I've encountered at other points in my career where I was just part of the pack. I was commoditized. What happens in these situations is you become vulnerable to reductions in force, to people, knocking you off their project teams. And the reality is, as economic times tighten, which we are about to see probably. We haven't had a true recession in a long time, and we may be on our way to one. Uh, we're overdue. And often people aren't ready for that, and they do get caught up in those reductions in force. My husband worked for IBM for a long time, and they were doing layoffs about every 6 months, stealth layoffs that didn't make it to the press. But he saw many great colleagues laid off. And there were often times where IBM would cut to the bone to preserve earnings. And he saw really competent people let go. So as we potentially approach a recession, but whether or not we are, you should always be in a position where you're in high demand and so invaluable to the organization that they can't let go of you, that they're going to find someone else. I mean, not that we want to see anybody get laid off, right? But you want to be in a position to be highly valued. So that's really what we're going to focus on tonight is how do you do that? How do you set yourself up for that? And one mistake that a lot of people make is they focus on being liked, or they focus on just being good at their job, but that's not enough. So if that's not enough, what is? Well, you really have to find a way to make yourself uniquely valuable, irreplaceable, indispensable. And usually it's best to do that around some kind of critical, urgent challenge that the company is facing. And ideally, it's one that's common across the company. And in good times, we might look for opportunities as well, but in tough times, you're looking for problems that you can solve and be known for. You want to be the go-to for that. You don't want to be part of the pack like this. You want to be the expert in what it is you're doing. So this will separate you from the pack, and uh, you will be you will be protected in the event of layoffs, or reconfigurations of teams or what have you. And even if you do get caught up in it, you will have become known for expertise that as other people move on to other positions in that company or elsewhere, they will work to bring you with them. I've seen this time and again. I've seen it with the executives that go through the executive ed program at Stanford. I've seen it with colleagues. I've seen it with friends. So you want them to need the outcome that you and you uniquely can deliver. So examples of this are, I have a colleague, a former student and now colleague, teaching colleague at Stanford, who, when she went through the executive ed program there, she realized that we have all these talented executives from around the world that go through this program, and yet there was no real support for people who wanted to pursue a startup idea. And so she decided to create a startup accelerator. And over 6,000 people have gone through this one particular program at Stanford, and everybody knows who she is. She has definitely become a go-to. There's another guy who went through the program early in its development, and he started a community and a conference of all the people that have ever gone through this conference, and everybody knows him. So I can list a lot of examples, and we can get into more as we go. But the key is you want to be known as the go-to person for some kind of issue. So the basic strategy for doing this, there are four things you need to do. And I'm going to quickly walk you through the high-level strategy, and then we're going to go through how you actually execute each of these things. So first, you choose an urgent, critical market problem that you are going to own. You lead a movement around a unique point of view and solution related to solving that problem. And you become so valuable that they can't live without you because you're delivering outcomes, you're delivering results. And you then broaden your impact and constantly adapt to stay ahead. So these are the four key elements of the strategy. And I codified this into something called the Apollo method for market dominance. Now, my book lays out a step-by-step recipe for a company doing this, for how a company establishes itself as the go-to in a market. But all of the methodology also applies to what an individual could do. An individual freelancer, an individual contributor in a company, and an employee and member of the team. I hope you can't hear my dog barking in the background. So let's get started. Oh, by the way, I named it the Apollo method because it turns out that the same things it takes to become the go-to are the things that it took to put a man on the moon. So I used the Apollo method, the Apollo space program as a metaphor. And actually, as I did research for the book, uh, the parallels were just remarkable at a detailed level. And I have a lot of really fascinating stories in the book on how that is. So if you have any interest in space or how that program came to be, I think you'll really enjoy those stories. So the four, I'm going to walk you quickly through the four phases, how and what you can do, and I'm going to try to make this as actionable as possible, and then we can address questions. So first, launch. The first thing you want to do is, ultimately you're trying to find what problem it is you're going to own. So the first thing you want to do is explore the issues. Ask around, what's the biggest problem no one is solving? I once wanted to get involved with the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. I was in that industry and I wanted to just get involved in a visible way. And so I called the local chapter and I said, I'm a new member, and what's your biggest problem? What's the biggest issue, the committee with that's getting nowhere, whatever. And they told me that it was an outreach program they had called Creating Critical Viewers for teaching kids how to watch television with a critical eye and use critical thinking. And so I got involved in that, and I read up on the issues, I studied it, and took ownership for that in that organization. So you want to explore, ask around, and look on the horizon for trends. What's coming? Obviously, AI is a big area. How is your company using AI? Are there opportunities it's not pursuing? Are there better ways it could be using it? What threats are there? What do you see that others don't? And the way to know that is to really understand the industry and the key trends and what's coming. Are there security issues that the company needs to address? Are there downsides to its implementation of AI that it's not considering and that it needs to take care of? Is there some customer segment or market that you can specialize in? So there are a lot of areas, but you want to just explore and try to find out what's going on. And then the next step after that is decide. Decide what it is you're going to own. What domain or problem can you own or volunteer to own? It may not even be part of your official job, but you can take it on. Some examples are, is there a new product idea or innovation? Is there an innovation you can apply to the product that you're part of, that you're working on? Some new capability that goes beyond functions and features? Is there a new approach to getting the work done that you can implement? I've had executives who have said, they want to, in their cases, I know most of you have Agile in your organizations, but in some of their cases, they did not. And they wanted to get the organization to adopt Agile. Is there some kind of a change that could get results? So this is what you want to figure out, is what problem could I own, and decide on what that's going to be. The next step is then you go out and you become the expert in that problem. You start by talking to people who are experiencing the problem. You go out and find out how other organizations are fixing the problem. You find out what it would take. You become the expert, you learn about it. And then you define a unique point of view on the problem, what needs to be done about it, and a unique approach for solving the problem. So I call this a why, what, how structure. Why there's a problem, what needs to be done about it, how you've solved the problem, or how the organization can solve the problem. So you come up with this point of view and approach, and you bounce it off of a few trusted advisors to see if it has appeal. Just get a sense of whether there's interest in in this, and whether it resonates for people. Do their ears perk up when you start talking about it? And once you've figured out what that's going to be, what you're going to own, you then declare it. You declare ownership. You might do this with a persuasive email memo. You might create some kind of internal white paper on the issue. You might put together a presentation that you give to key executive sponsors and stakeholders. Somehow you publicly put it out there to put your stake in the ground that you own this. So just to give you an idea, so I told you about the colleague who decided that there needed to be some kind of way to support executives in the executive ed program who had startup ideas. She created an incubator and startup accelerator, and she went out and started doing all the things I'm going to talk about tonight. And that's what has made her, the go-to person in this community of alumni executives who've been through this particular program. Uh, you know, an, uh, Another example is Googlers who go out and lead affinity groups within Google. They might be affinity groups that relate to a particular technology, a particular technical approach. Or in one case, one of the executives I've worked with, he leads an affinity group of Latin American engineers, and they help each other succeed in their careers. And he's very much the go-to person within Google for this particular issue. Can any of you, and you can put it in the chat or you can say it out loud, can any of you think of anyone in your company that has successfully done this, where they own a particular problem, they're known in their organizations? Anybody want to mention anybody? Can you think of anyone? A go-to person in your organization? Everybody's being shy. All right.
I think, Teresa, one example that I can come up with is in my previous company, there was a VP of product management whose job description was not particularly focused on regulations and compliance, because there was a separate department, but because of her extensive experience in the field, she became the one person outside of the compliance and QA department who could answer anyone's questions, including questions that she knew how to appropriately frame when asked by people in the C-suite, which
Mm-hmm.
so that made her somebody that when the senior leadership had questions, they would go to her because she could frame the topic and the answers in a way that was interesting to them.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's a great example.
I've got one more example. We had at a company where we were building hardware and hardware systems. There was always a challenge when you got towards the end of the lifespan of a product. Everybody talks about the product life cycle. And everybody wants the new shiny projects, and no one wants the products that are going to retire next year. And what do we do to migrate customers? And how many of these things do we need to buy in case people need warranties or repairs? And he tackled that and took it on as the only person that stood up and said, I'm willing to do that. Became an expert in negotiating with the big chip companies and all of that. And then he owned all the products that were going away, which actually was at any given time, a significant percentage of the SKU numbers in our catalog were owned by this one product manager.
Oh, that's a great example. And Neil has a really great example too. You said, Neil, my boss at my old job used to be the only one who could teach low-level programming, which put together with his being a good teacher eventually led to a promotion because he stood out. That's a great example too. All right. So let's look at what comes after. So you've decided you want to be the go-to for something. You've explored what's going on around the company. You've talked to people about the issues they're facing. What are the problems? You know from your own experience that there are issues and challenges. And you've decided, okay, this is what I'm going to own. What do you do to start putting yourself out there as someone who's known for this? Well, the next phase is the ignite phase. And this is where your goal is to ignite the company around your point of view and your approach to solving the problem. So there are some key steps with this. First, you're going to, you don't have time to go out and talk to everybody in the company. So the question then becomes, what's the most efficient way for you to get your message out there as quickly as possible? So the first thing you need to do is target who that's going to be. And there are some key tricks here. The first is many of you have heard this language, innovators, early adopters, early majority, in reference to markets, early adopters of technology, early majority, and this is called the diffusion of innovations, and this is the sequence in which different profiles of people adopt really just new things. It was actually developed. Some of these patterns actually first started being observed back in like the 1920s and 30s with farmers, when they were looking at what's the pattern for when farmers start adopting new agricultural technology. And they noticed that there's a small cohort. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my cursor moving. Can you see it? Okay. So there's a small cohort of people who don't need any evidence. Their attitude is, where have you been all of my life? I needed this 5 years ago. Give it to me right now. Those are the people who stood first ones to stand in line for any new technology. Then you have early adopters who need a little less proof. They're going to wait to see, does it work? But then they're going to adopt pretty readily because they also have the need. The early majority needs proof. They need case studies. They need examples. They need, they need to know it's working. And the late majority needs even more proof, and the laggards are the last to adopt. And so, this curve kind of represents the risk tolerance that people have in adopting something new. And so you want to go talk to the leaders in your organization, the influencers in your organization who would be considered the innovators, and maybe also the early adopters. Don't worry, don't talk to or focus on these people. It'll be a total waste of time because they want to wait for more evidence. The other thing is, every one of your organizations has, and this is true for industries as well, or really any market, there's a handful of people who are the power brokers in that environment. And even though they just look like one person on the surface, underneath they have this vast root system of a network that they can connect you into at any point. So if you're working, and I'm sure some of you have had the boss at some point in your career who knew all the other influential people across other parts of the organization and could quickly connect you. Then there are other people who really don't know anybody. They aren't well networked. You want to focus on the power brokers, these tree trunks, these trees with the vast root systems, who once they become believers, they are going to go out and evangelize to everybody else on your behalf. The next concept is the influencer food chain. And that is, there are certain people, and this applies to trade publications, it applies to the media, it applies to events. There's always some esoteric outlet, a blog, a very nerdy conference where all the earliest innovations are discussed, embraced, and that everybody buys into. And then they become feeders for the next level of publications, of events, of people, and then they become feeders for the next level. So, for example, this might be your company-wide newsletter or some other company-wide publication they are not going to quickly embrace something that's very new and on the leading edge of whatever's going on out there, certainly not the bleeding edge. So you want to focus on the niche groups, the niche departments. If you're talking to the broader industry, or if you're focused on a market outside your own company, and sometimes even if you're focused on your own company, if there are certain publications that you know all the executives, all the people that you care about read, then you would want to try to get some visibility. LinkedIn would be another outlet for that. So just be aware that there's a food chain, and it doesn't really help you to target these big fish first. You want to start with these feeder fish first, because then requires much less effort to get these fish to start buying into what you're talking about, which then gets these fish to start buying into what you're talking about. So keep that in mind as a key concept as well. So you've decided who you're going to target, who are the handful of people that I need to get to, that I need to have buy into what it is I'm talking about. So you've decided who you're going to target, and you go out and you meet with those people, and your goal is to convert them, and not just to persuade them as to what it is you're talking about. Let's take a simple example. I know it doesn't apply to a lot of you, but let's suppose your organization needs to adopt Agile as a methodology. You go out and start talking to some of those early innovator types, those forward-thinking people, and your goal is to get them to believe in the need for this, and get them to start evangelizing on your behalf. Your goal is to really rally these influencers around this point of view, so that you're not just some lone voice out in the void, in the woods, talking to yourself. You're trying to get other people to amplify your message on your behalf and stoke energy. Your goal is ignite the market, or ignite the organization around the need for what it is you're doing. And then ultimately, you're going to start trying to get some of those innovator stakeholders to start buying into and adopt what it is you're talking about. So, for example, a group or organization that fits the innovator profile, that actually wants to adopt Agile, where you don't even necessarily have a well-baked approach to this, but they're ready. Another example I've seen with executives in a couple of our courses, like a change management course, they want to implement OKRs in the organization. They want more accountability. They want more. And if you're not familiar with OKRs, basically performance measurement and tracking of organizational performance measurement and tracking against goals. So getting out there, getting certain people to agree that, yes, this is something we need. We need more discipline in how we set goals and track against them. And we need to do it in a more integrated way. You get them excited, and you get them energized, and they start evangelizing. And then ultimately you find those first early buyers who are willing to be your guinea pigs. So in the ignite phase, that's who you're really kind of focused on. The
So,
next phase, oh, go ahead. Does somebody have a question?
Teresa, there was a question in the chat about further explaining what stoke means.
Yes. So what I'm saying here is that you're trying to rally people around the point of view, but then you're also trying to really stoke enthusiasm, get people energized, get the market or your organization really really enthusiastic about doing this, enthusiastic about what it is you're talking about. It doesn't have to be in the early days. It's not going to be the whole organization, but it's the people who matter. So focus on the people who matter. You want them energized around what it is you're trying to do. Okay, great. That was a great question, Neil. Thank you. All right, navigate. The third thing you need to do is walk your talk. You need to deliver on your promises. So this is where your first goal is to target. So now, instead of just targeting those power brokers, you're trying to figure out, who do I need to target in the organization who's going to actually start implementing this? Which departments, which groups, which business units are likely to want to adopt OKRs or this methodology that I'm talking about? And so what you do is if you think of different groups and departments as market segments, and groups of your prospects and customers, you plot them on this diffusion curve, this innovation adoption curve, and see where they fall. Because sometimes I actually find this working with companies as well. They often start targeting buyers, and I'm using that in air quotes when you talk about internal customers. They start targeting people who are actually way over here on the curve, and you're wasting your time. They are not going to come in early. They're going to come way later. Even these people, you're wasting your time. You really want to focus on these folks, and then maybe the early majority, start priming them for what it is you're doing, even though they may not be willing to adopt it for some time. So this is where you want to. So earlier you were targeting the people that are going to help you evangelize and ignite the organization around what it is you're trying to do. In this phase, you're trying to target who is it that I'm going to get to actually adopt what it is I'm talking about. The
Uh,
next phase is, oh, go ahead.
yeah, I have a question here. Can
Yeah.
you hear me? Yeah. So
Yes.
you were saying that early adopters are going to evangelize you. What is the incentive for them to evangelize your product?
Well, usually they agree on the need. They agree there's a problem. They are or they're trying to do something similar. I was one of the first industry marketers in one of the organizations I was part of, another big consulting firm. And there were other groups trying to also grow their business units, and so they would hear me talking about, here's what you need to do. We need more industry marketing. We need more focus at the industry level. And they started embracing it and talking about it, and then they would start talking about it with their own business units. So it's really, you're trying to ignite a chain, like a chain reaction to what it is you're trying to get people to what it is you're trying to pursue. Okay, so pushbacks seen at B and G, is that normal? What are the inherent reasons? Are you talking about these circles when you say B and G, Vagish?
Yes, at the between the early majority and late majority,
Yes.
whenever if you want to like if you're putting some ideas or pushing some scenarios or some products, you see
Right.
in the industry, like at least in the couple of companies where I worked, I've seen that kind of like a blockage.
Hmm.
So and normally early
Yes.
adapters and up to see things go flat, things go smooth. There are no issues and no concerns. But later, there is almost like a wall.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, and
I agree.
also I want to clarify, there's an imaginary list of segments that go with these letters. So, imagine I have my list of departments, A through, what is it? I. And what I've done is I've taken each of those and I plotted where they fall on this curve. And yes, you're right. The Until you have more proof, until you have more momentum in terms of actual execution and delivery, you're likely to face resistance from the later early majority, and certainly from the actual late majority. And that's because they have a lower tolerance for risk. They want to see more proof. They're not satisfied with just the first few case studies of success, success stories. They want more. They're going to wait until they see a lot of momentum in terms of actual execution. And any of you who've read Crossing the Chasm would recognize that this is roughly where the chasm occurs. So there's actually a break sometimes in adoption, an interruption right about here. Jeffrey Moore, in his book Crossing the Chasm, calls this the chasm, because market adoption pauses. We're likely to see that for AI. I mean, they're kind of talking about it now, when they talk about how the AI bubble has burst, and as if AI is, going to be dead, which is absurd. But a lot of pundits talk about it as if, we're going to see a big pause in AI adoption. Well, we may see a pause in the speed of adoption. And so that would be the chasm. And if you've never read Crossing the Chasm, I highly recommend it, because not only does it give you a great explanation of this concept, but it's also a great primer when it comes to marketing and how to think about markets and segments and the adoption of technology. It's an oldie but a goodie. Okay. So you've decided, now you're ready to start implementing what it is you're talking about, whether that's, I keep coming back to the Agile idea with Dipti, the woman that I talked about who started the incubator for the Stanford Lead Executive Ed program. She actually came up with a way to kind of a framework for how this accelerator was going to work. And so she rallied some early adopters and started implementing that accelerator and had her first cohort of startups. And so then you develop your next phase after you decide who it is you're going to target. You start developing your actual offering. Is this going to be a methodology for actually implementing OKRs or Agile in the organization? Is this, if you're trying to, let me think of another example. If you're trying to lead a strategic planning initiative, this would be where you figure out how you're going to organize and manage that project and program. Or if you are trying to address a specific sales or marketing problem, let's say you've decided you have a vision for a better way to approach lead generation in your company. This would be where you figure out how that's going to work. You then start delivering. You have to deliver on your promises. You can't be full of BS. You have to actually be able to deliver results. And results is the key here, the word results. You want to deliver outcomes and impact and be able to talk about the impact. How much faster, let's say you've introduced AI for coding in your organization, or some better use of GitHub. How much faster can you do it now? How much money, how much cost have you wrung out of the product development process? Or how much have you reduced errors? If you've come up with a better testing mechanism, how much have you reduced the error rate for new software? This is where you actually go out and you make it happen with people. Then another key, because again, you're trying to build support for what it is you're doing. You're building your name, you're building your visibility, and you're building support. And one of the things you want to do is, as you start implementing this with people in the organization, you want to create a community of believers around the people who've been involved in adopting what it is you're trying to bring in, the problem you're solving. So you want that community of believers, that affinity group, birds of a feather, call it whatever you want, but get them together on a regular basis, get them talking with each other, get them, again, creating more and more support within the organization, get them out there talking to other people, and again, getting them out there evangelizing on your behalf for what it is, this movement you're trying to lead in the organization. And then your goal is to propagate this across the organization, getting more and more groups to adopt what it is you're talking about. And one sign of success is when other people start coming to you, asking you to do for them what you did for some other group. All right, the fourth thing that you want to do is accelerate. So you've implemented your approach. You've been solving this problem with some of the early adopter groups around the organization. Now it's time to broaden. You've got more and more proof that this works. You've got success. So now you can broaden to some of the later early majority, and or even the early majority, or then the late early majority. Broaden your market, basically. So you want to, you are leading the charge on getting this implemented across the organization. And you continue to lead by talking to people about what you're doing and trying to get them on board. You then broaden into other groups with wider impact. And then another very important thing you need to do is monitor what's going on out in the outside world, and then, of course, inside the organization, because nothing stays the same. Situations change, company priorities may change, market conditions change, technology, trends, financial conditions, of course, now with tariffs. All of these things impact what's going on. It may change the priorities in the company, and you have to make sure that you're constantly adapting to stay ahead of what's happening. You may have to pivot. You may have to rework your vision for how this is going to go, and you may have to morph to adapt to what's happening in the outside world. And then finally, repeat. So as we adapt, we just start all over again with the launch phase in case we need to revisit the problem we're trying to solve, or revisit our point of view and approach, and then continuously build support more broadly in the organization, and deliver results, and then again adapt. So the key here is that things can change on a dime. And I love the Amazon day one philosophy, and it needs to be your philosophy at work, because there's no such thing anymore as job security. And if you're a freelancer, independent contractor, there's no such thing as security with your clients. You always have to operate as if it's day one on your job, and you're having to prove yourself and deliver superior value so that they will not want to let go of you. So keep that mentality, that day one mentality. So these are the 4 phases. I have the language here that I use in my book for each of the 4 phases, but apply it to yourself individually, because jobs can evaporate for no rhyme or reason, and we need to be someone others fight to keep. That's your goal, that other people will fight to keep you on board. I have been involved in deciding who's going to get laid off. I have been one of the executives in the room deciding which 10% of the company has to get cut. It's a horrible conversation to have, but the one thing that always happens is that there are those people that are considered to be so valuable that you'd be willing to give up these 2 people to keep this one person. So I implore you, don't be satisfied to be an interchangeable part. Don't become commoditized. Don't be one of the zebras in the pack. Be that red chair. Be the go-to in your organization for something valuable, something critical. So I'm going to open this up for questions in a moment, but I do want to let you know that I'm so passionate about this. I'm so concerned, really, about this issue of the potential upcoming recession and people's jobs. I've coached and worked with many executives who've suddenly found themselves out of a job, and I'm going to put together, excuse me. I'm going to put together a coaching cohort, if there's enough interest, to coach any of you through this process as a group, so that you can, hold on one second. I need a cough. So that not only so that I can coach you, but that you can coach each other. So get in touch with me if you're interested in that. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. And then, of course, if you're interested in the book, there's a link to the Amazon page on LinkedIn. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and look at your beautiful faces, and let's take any questions. Oh, I see Neil. How can you remedy the effect of power broker who has a negative perception of you with regards to results? Okay, so yeah, that's common, and this is where you have to kind of learn how to play a political game to get your supporters and start campaigning for supporters in what it is you do and prove yourself. Too often we sit back and expect everybody to notice the wonderful work we're doing. We don't package it, we don't convey it. So if you have gotten great results, write that up and convey it in some way. Get it across to people and make sure you go out and build visibility for what it is you're doing, for what it is you're accomplishing. And if anybody wants to add to what I'm talking about, I know we have John, you're in the room. John Jackson was a very senior executive at FedEx, who headed up customer service. And, you've been in the room, John, when some of these conversations have happened and you've seen the politics at play, and feel free to speak up. And Mela, I know you've seen all this. Any of you others who would like to chime in?
You're absolutely correct, Theresa. You've been telling them it's the most factual, excuse me, it's the most functional and fact-based information that you can give, because it's for real. And when you deal with those things, being the person that has the cachet to navigate those spaces becomes very important, because in those rooms, the conversation becomes uh, very deadly. I guess it's the best way to describe it, because it becomes one or the other, and one word or one sentence from a person who is promoting you or looking out for you in the room could change the direction, or it could go the other way. So you're absolutely correct. Absolutely.
And I'm not muted. I'll add from a executive presentation skills coach perspective. When you do broadcast what you're doing, it's not just all bullet points and facts. They need to hear some of the real stories of people, instances you've interacted with. They need the anecdotes to understand your models today. Those bring facts and figures and data to life. And of course, there's also the in-person aspect to that, of looking people in the eye and really connecting on a physical level. So that you need the whole package.
Even as a C-level executive, having been a C-level executive in some companies, they're often the first to go. I mean, C-levels often have the shortest tenure of anybody in the company. And I know that, like in one case, I was one of two of the original C-levels that were left coming into a recession and some very tough times. And one of the reasons I survived, I was chief marketing officer. One of the reasons I survived is I could do the job. I could do the entry level person's job all the way to the C-level job. And so, they couldn't let go of me because there were certain things only I could do. I was the only person in the company that could do some critical functions, including crisis management around all the layoffs we were doing. So trying to keep customers and investors from running away. So, look for how you can be uniquely valuable. Will it be possible to get a copy of the slides or recording? Yes, the recording will be available, Tom, in a couple of weeks, perhaps?
Yeah,
We can send a message.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have this up on YouTube in a couple of weeks. I need to get it done before some upcoming travel. So, and I just finished two SVPMA videos in this past 7 days. So this one will go up pretty rapidly within the next week and a half or so.
And I tell you what, while we're talking, I'll run through my slides real fast and you can just take screenshots, okay? I'm just going to put them back up for a minute.
Theresa,
And we can keep talking while I do that.
Theresa, while you're doing that, I have a question. Is
Yes.
there anything when you've tried this strategy or when you were creating it, is there something that you tried doing that you found didn't work and you don't want to do again?
Things that didn't work. Well, it doesn't work to just try to be liked. And we all know total jerks in companies that somehow outlast the nice people or the competent people. So let me just get this slide out, expecting everybody to notice what it is you're doing and admire all of your wonderful work from afar doesn't work. So promoting yourself relentlessly. And we all know obnoxious people who are incredible self promoters, and yet somehow they win. So, don't be, I think, a mistake being reluctant to self promote, being reluctant to get your name out there and let people know about you. So that will be one. And one of the important things is hitching yourself to the wrong horse. Uh, you know, Many of us have worked for executives, and let me just bring these slides up for you. You know, I got lucky in my career because I became associated with a partner at Accenture, as an example, who went on to do great things, and I followed him, and I grew as he grew the business. I got to grow. Uh, and then there are other people I've worked with where they were not the people to really be attached to. They weren't particularly competent, so maybe it was based on their position at the time that I thought, okay, maybe this is the person I should become affiliated with. But they really weren't the right person. Follow your instincts on who really gets it, who really has talent, and even if you're working for someone that you don't feel is there, keep the long game in mind. Play the long game. Don't worry about the short game. Often people who are problematic will eventually hang themselves. You don't really have to do anything. You can just wait around until they fail, and then they'll be gone and no longer a problem. If anybody else wants to chime in with advice, please do, by the way. Okay, I'm just running through these slides here so you can take screenshots. There's one there. There. You can capture that one. And then that. All right. Could you go back to the iceberg slide? Which is the iceberg slide? Aaron, take yourself off mute and tell me which one you mean.
The one where the tree is going upward and then the tree's going downward.
Let's see.
I want to say it's about 10 slides back from the end, something like that.
This one?
No, the next one, I think. Yes, that
That
one.
one?
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah. I called it the iceberg slide because it's the roots. It's actually roots.
That's okay. All right.
Thank you.
Anybody?
Great presentation. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Anybody else need a slide that they missed? Okay. Super. Okay. So what questions? What other questions? And also, would you like to share anything that you're thinking of that, experiences you've had, people you've seen in your organization, like we were talking about earlier, or if you want, I can share a few ideas for the ways in which I've seen people establish themselves as the go-to. Away, Sin, you said, how do we decide on what problems are worth solving? Yes. Well, I would say, like I said in the explore step of the launch phase, go out and talk to people. Literally ask them, what's your biggest problem? What is frustrating the heck out of you every day? Start with your immediate team, your boss, your peers, and then looking on the horizon. When when I mentioned I had taken an industry marketing job, and one of the things I did is I studied it was the telecommunications industry, and I studied it like crazy. And I became actually one of the few people in the company who really understood what was going on across the industry. Most of the people in the company only knew the slice that they were dealing with, and I knew what was going on across the board, and I could actually see trends that were coming, the convergence of cable and wireline and wireless and all that, consolidation of some of the original telecommunications companies. When you really study trends, you can predict the future pretty much, because you're just extrapolating what's going on today into the future. You're just sort of watching what the natural progression is going to be. And so that's a big one. And then AI is a huge opportunity. This is a great time to apply what it is I'm talking about, because most of your organizations are struggling with how to adopt AI, how to monetize it, how to change it from being a science experiment to an actual business, to actually having business value, and look for where those opportunities might be. How can you use AI to increase the effectiveness of the product you work on? How can you use it to reduce life cycle costs? How can you accelerate the adoption of AI for specific business outcomes in your company? Are there silos in the company that you feel need to be broken and integrated? And could you become a connector and cross-pollinator across those silos? Could you be someone who holds the culture together? Is there some other methodology that you see coming in? Does your company need to make better use of GitHub or Jira or other tools that are out there? A great opportunity for becoming a go-to is to take a chief of staff position, because a chief of staff is absolutely essential to the person that they're supporting. And you get tremendous power, tremendous access, tremendous influence, and you also get a broad view of what's going on out there and the opportunity to help tackle some of these problems and really be the owner for them. And you absolutely become indispensable to the executive you're supporting. So if there are opportunities to take a chief of staff position for a little while, even if it involves a pay cut, I would definitely urge you to explore that. Okay, Neil says, I see a problem at my community college where students have trouble getting practical experience that leads to jobs, especially in software engineering. Undertaking a project to facilitate students doing website development work for the college itself. I was wondering if you had any tips with being the go-to in an educational organization rather than a corporate one, anything specific to education or school. Yes, I mean, I did that at Stanford in the Stanford Technology Ventures program. I don't want to get too specific, just sort of for confidentiality reasons, but I definitely became the go-to for a couple of specific functions. And educational institutions are notorious for having silos. And so there's also a great opportunity to break down silos in your institution. And getting out there and I get amazed at how few people actually know each other across departments or across functions in even at a place like Stanford. And so being a connector uh, is a great opportunity in an educational institution, along with many of you who work in corporations.
Just a quick follow on to Neil, because I've tackled this problem a little bit with students that I had. Um, I have found that there's a number of different ways to bridge that and get that first go-to. One was one educational institution or several that I dealt with uh, wound up with industry partnerships, and so they started some using the alumni network. They started to build some groups with industry, and so that sort of broke the hold of school only activities. There was a tremendous amount of political benefit for having alumni and companies coming in, potentially to look at internships and those sorts of things, and really a, a, a featured program over time. The other thing is that there's sometimes opportunities to volunteer for nonprofits. There's opportunities to volunteer for open source. And so those might be some things you might want to look into.
Back to one of the original questions, how to find out what's needed. I mean, literally going and just asking people, say, I want to get involved. What's your biggest problem? Where can I help?
So one of the biggest ways to tackle people to ask them where their headaches are is to be near the coffee machine on a Monday morning.
Aaron, I love this. I have shifted the last 4 years to becoming the lead gen and cold warm sales enablement lead for our sales hunters. I mean, sales and marketing is ripe for the go-to person to solve a problem. There are so many issues and challenges with sales and marketing, lead gen, sales enablement, being the person who knows uh, where the knowledge and expertise is that other salespeople can draw upon. Aaron, you have your hand up.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, what I just really discovered, I mean, I knew this beforehand intuitively, but being, in the day-to-day of it is just that all the incentives are so misaligned when you leave sort of corporate brand marketing, no offense to those people, but when you get into kind of we'll call it the invasion force is what I kind of termed it, right? The go-to-market, field marketing, SDR pre-sales, blah, 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 all the way to the sales hunters. And then, through we'll call it the initial customer care delivery people, like it's basically a train wreck of incentives, and executives, to be blunt, either don't care, don't know, don't want to know, whatever, have tried, whatever. They have their 15 excuses, which I think are kind of pathetic given the importance of it. But what I realize is that there's a niche down there that if you kind of take a product mindset, you really can, in some ways, defrictionize the value. You treat it like you literally just an old school value stream, sort of how I did it. Just look at it as like a VSM model and just did, what's the value that a hunter really needs, right? Based on their incentives. What's the value that the company needs from a hunter, which are often different than the incentives, right? So you start mapping all this, right? And then you just find all this white space. It's almost like you treat
Right.
the whole thing like a customer and you're a product manager,
That's
and then
right.
you just fill yourself in. And I found, I don't want to say this because no one is indispensable. I find myself pretty indispensable given all the actors, the work I'm doing for them that they don't want to do, they can't get anyone else to do, and they're gladly chop my salary and bonus up across, 6 functions. Um,
Hmm.
so, it's pretty, its IRR and discounted cash flow value is pretty strong, and I just found like I think that's a real role out there that has never really been sort
Hmm.
of developed. It's almost like the agile win coach is sort of how I define it. Because you're
There
trying
you
to
go.
drive to the win, to the close, so
So you've carved
Anyways,
out a space, a role for yourself in that may not even be officially part of your job description, but you've become known as the go-to for that area. We did have a question here. What helped you build credibility early on when trying to take ownership of a problem area, especially when we are new? Well, you'll be surprised at how quickly word gets around when you're actually solving a problem that people are desperate for. And you put the word out that call me, I will help you. And then you tell other people to call you. But word does get around, and this is what meeting with those power brokers is all about, because they're going to help. They've got those tentacles out into the organization, and they can help drive that awareness more rapidly than you could just on your own. Marina, let's see, Marina Lini, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah, you got it right. Thank you for your
Okay.
answering.
All right. So, let me know if there are any burning questions. Otherwise, we can put you into some breakout groups to help you help each other start to figure out how you might. And John, I know it's super late for you, but if you're willing to go in and coach some people on this, it would be great if you could help each other start to brainstorm that first step, the launch step. What am I going to possibly become the go-to for? What are some ideas? So Liz, let's put people into breakout groups of maybe 3, and we've got about 20 minutes. But before we do that, and I'm putting on my board member hat. Please join SVPMA if you're not already a member. We love having these free meetings for you, but we also want to have you as paying members for not only our local events, but also to support our programming. So please join the organization. Liz can send you all a link to how to join. I think it's either $90 or $110 at this point, which is, nothing. You can put your membership on your LinkedIn profile. We do have some benefits that are out there on the website. And we also want you to get involved as volunteers. We have a lot of things we're trying to accomplish, and we would love your help. And you can quickly establish yourself as a go-to within SVPMA. All right, so let's go out into breakout groups and help each other start to figure out how you might make yourself indispensable in your organization.
Welcome back, everybody. We're slowly emptying the rooms, getting folks back. I think we still have a few more. Looks like they're
I
coming.
know that wasn't enough time, but hopefully you guys got at least a few minutes to try to exchange some ideas with each other.
What do people think? Good? Thumbs up? Excellent. Well, I've just got a few wrap-up items, but first, before I do so, just everybody give Theresa a big thumbs up for a fantastic presentation this evening. Hope you all had a lot of ideas sparked from this and a lot of interesting growth opportunities there. With that, I think we will wrap up this evening. Once again, thank you to Theresa and to all of the SVPMA staff and board members involved. And again, please keep an eye out for the next meeting. Also, if you have friends that could have benefited from this evening, please let them know. Keep an eye out on the YouTube channel. Share, grow. Love to hear feedback on what you do with all this information as well. So we'll see you all next month.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.